I think I just always was a maker of things. That's all I can really relate to, is that I always made things. I had a good imagination. What I strive for is, and I don't always achieve, is sort of a depth. And sometimes it's actual depth, as like with embossed paper or collagraphs. And sometimes it's like a trompe l'oeil depth to a painting. It's infinitely interesting. It sort of gratified that exactness in me that I have. I can be very precise, and I can work with a tiny brush, and I can, like a lot of my huge paintings are done with small brushes, believe it or not. It's very bizarre. But I like that detail, very detail oriented. Life is hard for everybody. Everybody gets stuff in their life, but you can paint it if you can get it out that way. It's great release, great relief. The art thing was always in me. It's a part of my being, really, more than anything else. If I don't do it, there's a part of me missing. All right. Can I have a seat?
Yes.
Okay. Is that good?
Perfect.
Hi, I'm Annelies Van Dommelen, and I'm a painter and a printmaker, mostly. I also make handmade boxes and dioramas. I've studied at the Princeton Academy of Fine Arts, amongst other workshops here and there in specific mediums. I actually grew up in sort of a Dutch still life, believe it or not, because my parents came here from the Netherlands after the war, and then they had me, but they brought all their furniture with them, and all their knickknacks, and which weren't really knickknacks, they were like Delft porcelains and porcelain vases and Japanese porcelains, and and Rembrandt tables, and just beautiful, beautiful antiques. So I grew up in pretty much a Dutch still life. My mother, I can remember her just sitting on the couch and her getting up and moving to the table and just moving an item slightly so that it would be composed better with the copper lamp, with the mica shade and all that sort of thing. So, she drew me also when I was very young. It was my earliest memories are of my mother drawing me as a 2-year-old. I actually got up and looked at her drawing. So I have that memory. Plus they lived as very culturally, very involved in museums and classical music and also jazz, and lots of their friends were artists, so I knew artists all my life. So I guess that was, and I made things all the time. They didn't buy me toys. They really, maybe once in a while, but like for Christmas I would get a toy or something, but mostly I had to make my own things, so I became very inventive, so I was always a maker of things, which, and then somehow it turned into a painter of things, and then somehow it turned into going to school for art, and then there you go. That was 50 years ago, I guess. So. My father, Dirk Van Dommelen, was the superintendent of Washington's Crossing State Park, New Jersey. So we lived in the park, and I walked in the park. We all did, every day, many times a day. And we were very close to nature constantly. And I was always picking up objects, bird eggs or pieces of interesting twigs or whatever, some of which I still have in my flat files, ready to go into a diorama at some point, and I'm a collector of items for the dioramas that I do occasionally, which sort of take up the whole studio, so that's why it's an occasional thing. I often say my studio explodes when I do a diorama because you got to pull everything out of the flat files, So mostly I'm a painter. I paint in oils, acrylics, watercolors, And I've done silk screening, collagraphs, monotypes, etchings, stone lithography, papermaking, just many different things. So sort of well-rounded. I think I just always was a maker of things, you know. That's all I can really relate to, is that I always made things, you know, and I had a good imagination for sure. I was sort of a different kind of child. You know, I was very strong when I was 4. I can remember that. And, you know, and then life happens and you lose some of yourself, I think, later on a bit. But the art thing was always within me, or else it wouldn't have developed this far, really. So it's a part of my being, really, more than anything else. I think most artists who truly paint what they want to paint, not for money, but to paint what they want to paint, feel that way about what they do. So, you know, it's something I have to do. Like if I don't do it for, you know, a week, there's a part of me missing. So that rarely happens. You know, I'm in here a lot. Right now I'm in a painting mode, but a lot of my paintings will start with printmaking sometimes, because you get there are accidents that happen when you print make, and things are in reverse often, and you can be a little bit more experimental on a piece of plexiglass, for instance, if you're doing a monotype, with taking out and putting in, because the plexiglass is non-absorbent. And then after you print it, it turns into something else, and then you can review it and add to it. So I don't usually stop with just a monotype or just a jelly print or whatever medium I'm in. They always develop 99% of the time into a painting, basically. So that's sort of how I work. You know, I have to work from suggestion. I'm not one to think out the whole painting and then put it down on paper or board. I just start, and then whatever happens as I'm watching the process develop, basically. I just go with it, you know, wherever it takes me. And then if I see something, then I'll expound a bit more on that and edit the rest of the chaos that lies beyond it sometimes, you know. Sometimes I start with a very chaotic beginning, as in the watercolors, because it's a very wet piece of paper and the water just goes everywhere, and so does the paint. And as the watercolor paper dries, you get more control over the medium, so that's when you can sort of figure out where you're going next. It's constant, it's endlessly interesting to me to paint. I never get bored. If I get bored, I just change my medium sometimes, you know? That's why I take classes once in a while too, because I need something new to figure out. I want more information. That started as an etching that I did many years ago, maybe in the 80s, early 80s. And, you know, I had a few prints left over. So, and I have my etching plates still. I thought about reprinting a few of them, because I never did the full edition of any of them. Because I'm not an edition person. I'm really a one-off person. So I took that etching and I turned it into an oil painting. And I've done that with stone lithography prints that I've had and silkscreen prints that I've had. So my prints are never really in their finished state, really. You know, so when I do that, I mean, when I was working with those figures, which are all androgynous and all faceless, pretty much, because I never really wanted to depict Betsy so-and-so or Joe Schmo, you know, it's a human element that I'm going after. So I keep them androgynous and faceless, pretty much. Because as soon as you put a sex or a face on something, it becomes one person, not a lot of, not like everybody. So so my figures have always been that way. They've always been, nameable, I guess, And also, I was in a very dark studio for 17 years, which I loved. It was a huge warehouse space, but it was unheated and it was dark. So when I built this studio, a lot of those paintings had to be reworked because I didn't have a lot of light there, So it wasn't really the darkness in the message. It was more the darkness in the light availability I had at that time. So, and I've learned how to, I don't know, the more you know, the more you paint, the more you know. So I've had some large oils that I've gone into 30 years later, and now I know how to finish them. So things are not always finished then. Sometimes they sit for years until you can figure out what to do with them. And once you do, it's a very exciting process because all of a sudden you're painting like, oh, I know how to do this. I know how to fix this now. That's a great thrill. There are flames in there, and I think the flames represent my trials and tribulations in life, basically. So like especially the self-portrait of mine that's behind you. That's me as a 4-year-old, and she has flames under her arms, which are definitely revealing what the future is going to hold, So, because life is hard for everybody. Everybody gets stuff in their life. If you can paint it, if you can get it out that way, it's a great release, great relief. Well, I feel like I've always liked the shape of raptors. I've liked the curve of their bill. I saved a crow when I was a child and watched its wing get repaired and followed its healing at the Nature Center in Washington's Crossing. And perhaps that's where that imagery started. But I'm very immersed in the natural world, but I don't want to paint a vase full of flowers. It's not what I do. I like to kind of reinvent it in a weird way, but it does relate. People, if someone shows you a picture of something from way under the sea, you're like, the hell is that creature? How did that creature end up? I mean, they're so bizarre. And nature is so bizarre in so many ways. You haven't seen everything yet, so you might as well make some of it up too, So I feel a great leniency to do that. So I have a whole series of strange blooms, for instance, just flowers and plant life that I make up, and a lot of it's included in my paintings in different ways. So please come see the show at Ficus in Princeton on Nassau Street. The gallery space above will be devoted to artwork between myself, Nancy Lloyd, and Annabelle Bauza. I'll be there. They'll all be there. Come visit.